and welcome to another episode of Just for the Record. I am Dr. Etalie Pickering Mitchell, and I'm here with senatorial aspirant Miss Shalima Edwards. Miss Edwards, how are you today?
Uja, greetings. I am grateful.
Thank you so much for being with us today. We truly appreciate your presence. And we're going to have a very candid conversation about what our community needs moving forward and the individuals that we want to elect for these positions.
All right.
So you are new to the front. This is your first time running for an elective office? Yes?
That is correct.
Great. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, so let me begin by saying that I was born on the island of St. Croix. Parents-wise, my mother is from the island of Dominica. She transplanted here over 4 years ago. And my father was born on St. Croix. Generational wise, the oldest that I can say, my great-grandfather was born in 1878. I am deeply rooted here in St. Croix as well as the Caribbean. I find myself representing all aspects of people in terms of being indigenous. I am a graduate of the St. Croix Central High School in 1994, and I do remember our theme, Be Strong. So over the years in my journey of life, I had to go through challenges like I'm sure everyone had to, but at the end of it, I always had to remember, be strong, Shalima, no matter what. So I am a mother of two beautiful adults. That's right. Okay, so my son, he's about 25 years old, my daughter 20 years old. I'm not only a dedicated mother, I'm a dedicated mother of the village, I say. And why I say that is because I look at children as being an extension of my mother, carekeeping, so to speak. I have been and involved with children. I started with the AmeriCorps member as a volunteer at the Boys and Girls Club, and from that I joined the Child Works, that's dealing with children again. Later on, I should say prior to that, I joined the Virgin Islands Army National Guard, and I served there for about 9 years. I worked at various places such as the Imaging Center, so I want to get people more familiarized as where is Shalima Edwards, who is she, what is she all about. So I work at the Imaging Center in Sunny Isles, then at the hospital, and then I started to work in the government. First department was Department of Health, under the Medical Assistance Program, and then transferred to Human Services under the Cash Assistance Program. So I've worked in the government for approximately 15 years, serving the community. I've also been involved in the PTSA, Parent Teacher Student Association, since my children started to attend public schools. So Alexander Henderson, Cloudomaco, Arthur A. Richards, and the St. Croix Educational Complex. So I've been a dedicated parent, definitely knowing that, hey, I can't just leave my children alone in this society. I have to be there, do my part as much as possible, but also, as I said, be a village mother. So looking out for the best interests of our children, that's why I've dedicated those years being involved in the PTSA. I am involved in various nonprofit organizations, and I'll start with one which I feel is very important in knowing who we are as a people, which is United Caribbean Association. That's UCA. Now, UCA has been carrying the torch in remembering our greatness. For example, July 3rd, via Emancipation Day, and then recognizing other significant events or what our ancestors been through October 1st. So they have been doing that for years, and I've been involved in that aspect of making sure that our people remember who we are. So I have to definitely acknowledge UCA for allowing me to be involved in helping things, because I recognize that those individuals, they are there, they've been doing it for years, and they're getting of age. And I was younger at that time, and I was like, I want to be involved. I want to help push forward our history, our story, and I did that, and they welcomed me, so I'm grateful for that. I was also, when I was working in the Virgin Islands government, I became a union shop steward while working at Department of Human Services, and through that, with the support of my colleagues, they said, Shalima, because I was like in shock when I started to work there. It's like, oh my goodness, it's like chaos and things going on. And I was like, okay, so what are y'all doing about it? Well, we tired of complaining to the management or what have you. I say, well, what about your union? You know, like, well, they were just complaints. So I am a person, I don't just like to complain. I like to take action. So as a result of my forthcoming and being active, they said, why don't you just be the shop steward? So I did that. And then through that time, I saw some things that were not great, paying union dues, and that's where my advocacy and encouraging employees to keep their union dues here in our territory. Mainly when I remembered our great St. Croix Labor Union, which was founded by David Hamilton Jackson. That's why I kept on blowing the horn. Keep our union dues here. Let's support our own. Let's, let our dues benefit us, just like what St. Croix Labor Union did. So with others, we formed a nonprofit organization, Union Members in Action, and that was really advocacy, letting the employees know what their rights are. And later on, I then became involved in other nonprofit organizations, such as the St. Croix Council of Elders. And at that time, I was already a mom and everything, but I said, you know what? I'm getting older, and I want to be the best mom. I want to be the best example as an elder. So I was gracefully accepted by a mentor who said, well, okay. And I said, I will follow you till the end of, your life. So I could be prepared to become that elders. And so the St. Croix Council of Elders is the one that I joined, and I'm grateful for them for accepting me at a young age, because I was like, again, I want to become the best version of me for my children and for the community. I later created with others a nonprofit organization, which is Umoja Caribbean Union. And Umoja Caribbean Union is a labor union, and it is local, and again, advocating for our rights, but also making sure that our dues truly represent us, but we extended it to where it takes a community to be involved. So with skills, emphasizing that, we affiliated with some other organizations. I do remember in particular a community that we assisted in building box gardens. We had a workshop. So that's a skill. It's like you are your workforce. You have to have the skills so that you could persevere. This year, and I'm going to just highlight it because last year we focused on Kwanzaa every day, knowing the principles and practicing it every day. But this year we're focusing in promoting developing a healthy workforce. So as I said, your body, that's your workforce, and we focus on self, family, to make a better community. So if you want to work, for example, do work, and if your mind is not straight, and if you're, dysfunctional things happen in the family, then you can't really work productively. So that's the theme that we are carrying this year. I'm also part of the Ethiopian World Federation Local 5, and I served in two capacities. I'm still a sergeant of arms there, but I serve as a director. So I'm just highlighting these things because people may need to know, like, who's Shalima? What have you been involved in? Right. And stuff like that. And yes, this is my first time seeking a seat in the Senate, but why is the question.
That was a lot of information that you gave me in your introduction, and I appreciate that. So we're going to go ahead and start with the questions, and we're going to talk about agriculture. Mm-hmm. The agriculture industry of the Virgin Islands has not seen its full potential. Yet every election year, agriculture is a part of many platforms. How can you move agriculture from a talking point to a lucrative stake in the ground?
All right. Well, definitely, I will with the support of my colleagues, this is something that may have not been introduced. Well, it probably has, but it hasn't been given much light, which is to reapportion the legislature. You would have senators that would be assigned to specific departments, and agriculture is one. So that would be an at-large senator because that department covers the territory. Mm-hmm. So that person would ensure that funds are identified and it goes to where it's supposed to go. The head of agriculture would be held accountable. So that's what's happening. What's not happening, is that things are not being properly managed, oversight is not applied, and that's why agriculture is not given the light that it should give. We do have in an existing law where agriculture is supposed to be taught in schools. Mm-hmm. We have the St. Croix Educational Complex. The land is so huge, but where are the foods? Where is that significant part in teaching the children how to feed themselves, providing food for the school? So agriculture have to have that highlight, and it has to be paid great attention, just like other departments, and I'm sure I'll get an opportunity to speak of that. But having the senators, how it's set up right now, reapportioned to have better accountability, to have oversight of those departments is very crucial.
Thank you for that. As you mentioned about the St. Croix Educational Complex having all of that land and where are the foods, what is a marketing plan that you would work with or create to help with the local sales of local produce?
All right. So one of the items on the platform is to have a processing plant, food processing plant. So with the foods that we produce here, for example, and I'm going to have to highlight this farmer, she's a woman. She shared with me and others over 100 things that she can create. So it's value-added products. So by having a processing plant, we could definitely encourage our people to go into that industry of making value-added products that can then be sold at our local stores or even exported. And as we export, mm-hmm. This is where we have to go a little deeper in. The Revised Organic Act, it allows us to receive funds of any products that are exported to the United States, and that will bring income to our territory. So again, having a processing plant, encouraging people to go into that area of you can do more with your food, create value-added products.
Thank you for that. Now, we have seen a lot of things change as far as how agriculture is done, as far as the planting, sales, etc. But how can we diversify agriculture in the Virgin Islands to include hydroponics?
Well, as you said, yeah, there's different aspects of agriculture, and I'm not an expert, but hearing from other individuals, there's horticulture, there's permaculture. Right. So there's different ways that we could actually deal with food. So one would say agriculture is more so focused on monocropping, but aquaponics, so what have you, there's other ways that we can create food and use out what surrounds us. There's fishery, things like that could also be incorporated and should be incorporated.
Right. Thank you very much. So we're going to transition into economics and small business development. What gap exists in small business development in the territory, and how can you contribute to filling that gap?
As a former business owner, I do realize that small businesses should be given some incentives. And when I say incentives, now there are big companies that may get tax breaks with filing their income taxes, but on a local stand, what incentives are local businesses given? So I look at businesses being part of the community, and they should contribute to our communities. Now, if they do, what are the incentives to give them if they do that? So I would say that we have to implement tax incentives for these local businesses to let them recognize that they are part of the community, and the more they contribute, the more incentive they will receive.
Okay, so I know of many of my peers. They go through the process of opening their own business. Sometimes it's a lengthy process, right? Sometimes they're not able to get through quickly enough because they're lacking certain things, or they're not able to access certain documents, whatever the case may be. So, what support do you feel is lacking for small businesses, especially those who are interested in opening their own business in the territory? And what measures can you implement to address this matter?
So what's lacking? I'll have to seriously ask more business owners what's happening. So if it is there's hindrance in the process of applying and getting quick response or what have you, then that's a matter that needs to be looked into. The consumer, whomever is heading the consumer department, or if it's lieutenant governors, then conversation have to take place, not only with that entity, but as I said, like the business owners. It's like, you all are experiencing what you're going through, so having that conversation is very important, and then I will better know how to implement what needs to be implemented. So I don't have the fix all. I love to engage people so that I can hear from them, and you're on the front line and you know what's going on, so I'm open to hearing from the business community.
Thank you for that. And what are two untapped economic development opportunities that you feel are undeveloped? And what is your plan to contribute to the development of these industries?
Two untapped areas. Our history. It was something that was mentioned that on St. Croix in particular, we have a lot of history, we have a lot of ruins, and if we use it as a way of tourists, like tourist industry in terms of knowing the history of St. Croix, visiting places, then we could market that, because people want to know our history. But if we're not exposing it to people, then they won't know. So promoting our history will attract tourism, and at the same time our people will be more engaged in saying, hey, I can be a tour guide, etc., etc. So tapping into that part of tourism with our history is very important. Another area that's not tapped into and that should be given more light, I'm going to say education. And why I say education is because with a people on this island or in the territory without skills, we lack a lot of skilled workers, and we depend on people coming from outside in. We have to make sure that our children, before they graduate, and as part of the platform, before they graduate, they learn a trade. They need to recognize that. And if they don't see the importance, or we as a community don't see the importance of preparing our young people to become skilled, then we lose out. There's idleness taking place. And that is one area. Again, education needs to be tapped into more. More attention have to be given into that department, investing in our children the real way, because they are a part of our community. They will be the next doctors, they'll be the next nurses, they'll be the scientists, the engineers. So we don't have to be looking outside unless they went out to further their education, and we say, okay, come back home because, we need you. But we have to tap into that particular part.
Thank you very much. And education your conversation about education is a great segue into the next topic, which is our public education system. What is your opinion on the current state of public education in the territory? And what specifically would you do to address the current state?
The state and education, I feel it's too political, or politics, I call it. We need to get that out of our education. And as a way of doing so, on a platform that I definitely support, is to allow for the Board of Education have full authority to manage Department of Education. They'll basically hire the commissioner or the superintendents, and they will have to manage the Department of Education. Now, given that they are board members, they are to be held accountable, of course.
Right.
So that will, an adjustment would be made where the members will be held accountable for specific areas in education that must be implemented. So with that platform that I support, that will allow for the Board of Education to have full authority to manage Department of Education.
Thank you very much. And at this time, we will take a quick commercial break. Stay tuned for the next half of Just for the Record.
I am Eustace Grant Jr., also known as the Don D. I was diagnosed with stage 2 prostate cancer on August 31st, 2017. That moment changed my life. The hardest part of the experience was the thought of not being here to see my children and grandchild grow. Luckily, my family and support team were real. They had food sales to show their support. My prayer warriors and doctors were phenomenal. Do I encourage men to get screened for prostate cancer? The answer is an absolute yes. If you are an African American male with a family history of prostate cancer, you should begin screening at age 40. If you are unsure about screening, talk to your doctor to decide if screening is right for you. This message was brought to you by the Department of Health, Division of Chronic Disease and Prevention.
We've been together for some time now, soon to be married. I think we're ready for a family of our own.
I knew that when I proposed that she'd be ready for us to have a child, but knowing that I carry the sickle cell trait, I may have a few questions that I need answered first.
Sickle cell disease is an inherited red blood cell disorder in which the red blood cells are abnormal. As a result, there aren't enough healthy red blood cells to carry oxygen throughout the body. Having sickle cell disease doesn't mean it's the end. Learn ways to manage your sickle cell disease. First, know your status by getting tested. Do you carry the sickle cell trait or genes? If you do, then follow the regimen advised by your clinical professional and practice a healthy lifestyle. You can live well as a sickle cell patient.
We were nervous at first, but now knowing our status, carrier and non-carrier,
Now we can finally have a family of our own.
sickle cell didn't stop us.
And it shouldn't stop you.
And welcome back to Just for the Record. So where we left off, we talked about public education and your opinion on the state of public education.
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about vocational education and how you feel about vocational education as it is right now, and what are some future aspirations that you have for vocational education?
Right. With that particular part, as I said earlier, we want to make sure that our children learn a trade before they graduate. Now, what that trade looks like is like what area that they're interested in. If it's sewing, become a seamstress or a tailor. If it's about becoming a carpenter, electrician, etc., well, we have to make sure that we have staff that is being paid, because as I understood, from a young person, is that my instructor is not there, or we don't have an instructor for this or that. So we have to make sure that we truly invest in education, and by investing in education, that we make sure there are teachers that will teach those skills that are needed at the vocade level. Again, having the Board of Education. Now I have to include the Board of Technical Career, I believe that's the name of the board, but they too have to be held accountable likewise. We truly have to invest in education the real way.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. We have talked about a lot of weaknesses that our public education system has. So can you identify one or maybe two strengths that you have seen with our public education system?
Over the past, I would say that there are, and there still is, okay, there still are dedicated teachers. And despite the challenges that they go through, sometimes they go through take out the monies out of their own pockets to make sure they have the supplies that's needed. So that, I would say, dedicated teachers are there. Another part, there are children that are serious in learning, and they would be committed. I'm giving this example because this is where I'm currently working. I'm working at the Caribbean Center for Boys and Girls Club. Okay. So there are some young people, when we give them an opportunity on Fridays, we call it Free Friday. You don't have to do homework that day, but you can do so to get it out of the way. So I've had some of the children like, I'm going to do my homework. I was like, okay, to see the motivation, the self-motivation in our children is so inspiring because they want to learn. So that's what I would say.
And how do you think we can build upon that to make it even more strong?
Parents' involvement is very important. I remember there was a program called a Parent University, and that, to my knowledge, isn't happening. By engaging parents in their children's lives is very important, so we have to bring back what was working and make sure that it's functional and make sure it's funded to allow for more parents to see their importance in their children's education. Because you could have a child, want to do this, want to do that, their aspiration is there, but if the parents aren't engaged in it, that's an issue.
All right, thank you for that. And we're going to move into youth development. What programs would you legislate for training, career and technical education, and employment opportunities for the youth?
Well, any program that focuses in that area, because I'm sure there are, and they are not funded, I would definitely push legislature to fund those areas. I've heard about the Youth Commission, and I'm going to give the example. I grew up in Williams-Lillite housing community, and there was a program, I don't remember the name, but that program was there during the summer. It allowed the children to learn steel pan, but also different skills, sewing, cooking, etc. And then there was after school activities in the housing community that took place. So if there's existing programs in place that need to be funded, or if we need to create or return what was working, then let's do that. So I feel that there are answers to our problems. We just have to be as reflective of the past. That's Sankofa. Reflective of the past, what worked in the past, bring it forward, because we need to move forward in improving our community. So funding these programs would be definitely a high priority.
And I'm glad that you mentioned the Youth Commission, because that was my next question. And do you support the reestablishment of the Youth Commission? Why or why not?
Yes, I do. And I was fortunate to meet someone, he's an elder right now, and he was blowing the horn saying, I remember when we used to do this, we used to do that, and that helped get the youth them off of the street. And he was a rough guy growing up, but because of that program, he learned some skills. And also I believe they employed them or provided them a stipend or what have you. So those are things that need to be returned, and I will definitely support that.
Thank you very much for that. And as we're now transitioning into talking about getting our youths off the street, let's talk a little bit about crime and justice. Crime in the territory fluctuates. There is often an uptake and then a downward slide. What do you think are two contributing factors to the uptick in crime, and how can the factors mentioned above be remedied?
Okay, so two factors. I would say not knowing oneself is a factor, and the other thing is that we are not lack of police presence or having cameras in certain areas. If the cameras are not working, it needs to be working. But I'm going back to knowing oneself. If we and our children don't see themselves as being important and that they are contributors of the community in a positive way, then they will continue to be reckless. They will go into that area of committing crimes, disregard to the community members in their community. So we have to get back in teaching our children so that they can know who they are but also that they are a part of this community. And if they want to see a peaceful community, they have to recognize they play a very important role in that. And again, with the making sure that there's police presence. I remember, again, I'm going to use where I grew up most of all, in Williams-the Lights. So there were police officers, community police officers, and they were there. They were engaging with the young people and making maybe that all communities, public communities especially, need to have police presence. There's a place where they're actually stationed, but they're engaging in the young people's life. That needs to happen. It needs to return, I should say.
One of the things you mentioned was police presence, and I know that we have heard about the recruitment of police officers here in the territory. So what practical suggestions do you have for police recruitment?
All right. So I would continue in saying that once the children or the youths recognize that they are a part of the community, and if there's a need for police officers, then they could seek that area of becoming a police officer. And I'm going to use me as an example. So when I graduated in 1994, I wrote down a list of places that I want to work, and the last two was the Virgin Islands Army National Guard and Police Department. So I was like, hey, anywhere I could contribute to my community, I'll do that. So again, the children need to see that they're a part of the community, and if there's a need for more police officers, then they would be more willing to step up and go in that route. But they have to know that there is a need. And if they're not seeing that there's a need in these key areas, then, it will be a lack of.
Okay, thank you for that. But what about, I know we talked a little bit about the children seeing that there's a need, but there are also adults who may want to be a part of the VI Police Department. So what strategies do you think that VIPD can use? What legislation do you think can be put in place to try to reach out to these individuals so that they can too become a part of the VIPD?
Public awareness. They could or they should let the adults know what's the requirements. I think you have to be at a certain age. You can't be older or what have you. But, public awareness, letting the people know, okay, well, we have positions. This is the qualifications. Ongoing public awareness is I would say, is the answer for that.
How would you improve access to legal resources for residents of the territory beyond legal services and public defender agencies?
Repeat that question one more time. I meant to sink in.
Okay. How would you improve access to legal resources for residents of the territory beyond legal services and public defender agencies?
Well, legal access. We say we have the internet, but there are certain things that may not be accessible via the internet. Maybe we need to allow for access to be there. So it's like if you have to research the VI code, for example, then okay, we have access to it and you can read what the laws are so that you could better prepare yourself to defend yourself if you have to. I would say like even for civics, I know going back into education, but children need to know what their civic duties are and the responsibility of the government, and they will probably more than likely be taught those areas of laws. And again, access-wise, internet could be another resource.
All right, thank you. And we're going to go into the conversation about good governance. So what does good governance mean to you? And how have you contributed to this ideal in the territory?
Okay, good governance to me is that if the government provide the basic things that we need in our community. I'll use an example, littering, right? And I'm going to use me as an example. So constantly when I go to the beach and I see a lot of trash on the ground, it disturbs me. So I make sure that I pick up the trash, even though it's not mine, and put it in the dump. What good governance can do is make sure that there are adequate bins around the area and informing people, just public awareness. Hey, throw your trash in, throw your garbage in the trash, provide those basic things, the bins, for example, that could be done. Let me see. Of course, with our roads, good governance would make sure that we don't have a lot of potholes on our island. Ensuring that, again, the people recognize that they are important in their community. So let the people know that, hey, this is your island. You can contribute. More public awareness would be necessary. Good governance and making sure that our health areas, our hospitals or what have you, is prepared to take care of the people. So some basic things, good governance, that's what comes to my mind. And then we just engage in as good citizens to ensure that we do our part.
Thank you very much for that. We're going to segue into healthcare and human services. What is your opinion on the current state of healthcare in the territory, and what specifically would you do to address the current state of healthcare?
Two things that pop in my mind is that we need, and we probably do, we need to make sure that we have staff in place. We need to make sure that we have physicians, our doctors, our nurses, and not rely on outside medical specialists to come here. Because if we have a skilled workforce, individuals, again, investing in their community, see that there's a need, then they will gladly, I'm sure, say, okay, well, I want to become a nurse. I want to become a x-ray technician or what have you. And that can address that. Another area that will address our situation, to improve our situation, and I spoke of it earlier, is reapportion the legislature. So if you have a senator, an at-large senator responsible for health human services, then that person will be held accountable to make sure that there's adequate funding, and also holding the board members of the health hospital. I believe that's because there is a board that is pertaining to the health and hospital. So hold those board members accountable, and that is the role of the senators. They could do that. So having an at-large senator responsible for that area is crucial, and through legislation, along with others, we will reapportion the legislature to make that a reality.
Okay, so you mentioned about recruitment from off-island, bringing in specialists to come into our hospitals to provide the necessary services for our people. What about recruitment right here locally? What strategies do you think you can implement to help with the recruitment of those medical specialists, especially when we have our very own students who leave, they go away to the States to get the training?
Mm-hmm.
What can we do to bring them back home so they can bring those services to our community?
Let them know there's a place for you. And if what they're getting up in the States or wherever in the world, because I know some individuals, they have certain skills, but they're not accepted for whatever reason. And wherever they are, they're getting paid huge money. Mm-hmm. So it's like, let's provide incentives for these young people, or the people who go away and 20 years or what have you, because I know some people, it's like they leave St. Croix and they don't return until 20 years after. Why? Because we're not valuing them here. And we have to, again, encourage our young people to see their need, the need of them in the community, and they will focus on improving their community. If they want to become a nurse or doctor, etc., they will see that they are needed, and bring them back. They'll get some incentives. If it's a house or whatever,
right.
We have to be creative to attract our people from here, but people who are away, our people, to return back to the Virgin Islands and contribute to improve our home.
One of the things that I know is a hot topic is funding for our healthcare system.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you increase healthcare funding in the territory?
Okay, so this is something new, but it's on the platform, and I'll get to it, where it's finance and banking. We need our own bank here. Now, one may say, well, we have a lot of banks here. No, those are branches. The banks are held elsewhere. But if we have our own bank, then the interest, the loans that our people need, it's here. And it can happen because it's happening right now in the States. I think it's North Dakota. They have a bank, their own bank. So we'll be able to utilize those funds to provide what we need to make the improvements that we need. And then earlier I mentioned about the 1954 Revised Organic Act. Again, it's like the monies that we are owed by the United States, then it's like, hey, we have to lobby and say we even want an increase, because right now the rate is $10.50. Anything that we export to the United States, the funds could come right back. That would help fund programs that we need. We have the rum, we have had the refinery, but again, I'm tapping back into agriculture. We could send, export value-added products. There's ways that we could create and generate funds within and be able to fund things that is needed, whether it be insurance as well. So having our own bank is something that definitely is on the platform that I support, and we can make it happen.
Right. And what is your position on mental health services in the Virgin Islands?
It's very interesting because I'm like, there are people on the streets. How do you get them off of the streets willingly? How? I don't have the answer for that, but I do recognize that there are a lot of people who have mental issues and they're on the streets, and sometimes they're really you can't really reach them because they're far off. We need to explore more. Again, I don't know how to, and I would invite the experts, see what works in their area so that we can deal with our mental health issue here. And advocating as far as there's a lot of things that contribute to illnesses, mental health illnesses that needs to be explored. Sometimes it's the things that we eat could affect our mentality. So again, I'm willing to explore that with the experts and see what we can do to curb that situation of having mental health an issue here in the Virgin Islands.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And we have come to the end of Just for the Record. So my final question to you is, why should the people of St. Croix vote for you as a senator in the 35th legislature?
I am someone different. I am an independent, and this is, yes, my first time. I feel that people who are going to be representatives of the people should have a heart for the people, a good heart. Let me say good heart for the people. What motivated me in seeking a seat in the Senate is one of my former employment was as a disaster case manager. And I worked for a nonprofit organization at the time. Funding was just depleting. And I reached out to our legislators. I reached out to the administration. I said, if there's anything that you can do to assist our most vulnerable population by just providing tarps, because on the front line, I've seen my elderly and disabled individuals whose roofs are damaged and they're still living in there since Hurricane Maria. Okay, who slipped, who fell, and sadly, some of my clients passed away waiting for the assistance to come with Envision tomorrow. So just recently, before I left that employer, because of lack of funding, I asked the senators then, hey, if you could pull your little resources together and just provide that vulnerable population with tarps. And because of lack of response, I said, oh no. We don't need people in there to say that they represent our people and you don't have the heart for it. So I have the heart, I have the love for my community, and that's why.
Well, thank you so much for being with us here today. I appreciate your responses. And we have come to the close of Just for a Record, where we're bringing information out to our community, to the electorate, so they can know about the candidate aspirants for the 35th legislature. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I vote.
I vote.
I vote.
I vote.
I vote.
I vote. I vote.
I vote.
I vote.
I vote.
I vote.
I vote.
I vote.
Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, Epsilon Iota Sigma Chapter,
and Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, New Chi Zeta Chapter, encourages you to participate in the process of democracy by voting.
As a citizen, your vote is your voice. You get to select the type of leader that reflects and represents your ideas and your interests.
You get the opportunity to choose your advocate.
This election, do not get left behind.
Do the right thing and vote.